What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me my two great co-hosts, Fede, Perez, and Ralph Hanna. And guys, we're in mid-August already, but obviously there is a lot to talk about today. Obviously, we're coming fresh off of the round of 16 of the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana. We're going to talk about how all three of the Paraguayan teams did in their first legs, and if they have enough to turn it around in the second leg, because it feels like it's at least from a Libertadores standpoint, nobody won. It's all draws at that point. So, and it's kind of spoiling the Cerro result. But nevertheless, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what Olimpia did. We'll talk about what Recoleta did. We'll also talk about what's been going on in Copa Paraguay. Obviously from our Paraguayans abroad, we're right at the midway point of August. Obviously the transfer window in Europe closes very soon. So obviously it's now or never for a lot of these players to make some big moves. Obviously, there's always rumors about going about in the country as well. But yeah, certainly I guess it's good to see something going on. And of course, obviously European leagues start very soon. La Liga starts today, next week the Premier League. And then obviously other leagues as well. So, certainly it's going to be a very interesting sort of 2026-27 season. So, I'm definitely excited about that. But, Fede, I guess I'll go to you first and, want to ask how everything's been with you. Obviously, we had Copa Paraguay going on as well in the league action as well. That's been going on too. So, it feels as if though for a lot of these teams, it really is basically their season's defined at the minute because, certainly a lot of these games going on, be it from a local league, from a cup competition perspective as well. This week or this next week, I should say, really is also crucial for how their season's going to come up at the end of the year.
It is true, Roberto. How do you, how do Ralph, how do everyone listening to Guarani Vision? Like always, great to be back for another episode. And it was an interesting week, guys. I mean, we have enough games to look back to and review what happened with our Paraguayans in Sudamericana and Libertadores. Other teams were also playing Copa Paraguay, just like you said. It actually started kind of bad for a couple of teams in first division, like Guarani, that was eliminated by Sportivo Iteño. I'm looking also that Ameliano wasn't able to do it. They lost also to Independiente of Campo Grande. That's an intermediate team. That's a second division team that went through. So we're already starting to have our surprises. Looking forward to what could happen next week. In a couple of weeks, we're also going to have Cerro and Olimpia coming in. So it's going to be an interesting one, as maybe it could be that season also in the Copa Paraguay with a couple of surprises. And yeah, in Sudamericana, especially with what happened with Recoleta, what a letdown, right? A certain player, especially in that showdown against Boca, it really got ugly for them quick in that second half. So definitely gonna talk about that game. Proud of what I saw from Cerro Porteño, at least what they did against Palmeiras. They were able to fight it again. They've been playing in that Libertadores mode that you need to play under. They did it again, I believe, against a giant team like Palmeiras. So they were able to get out there alive, just like Olimpia did. I think out of the three teams, maybe Olimpia was one of the ones that suffered the most, especially in the situation that it was 11 on 11, but they lost a couple of important players going into this game, and you kind of feel it. You kind of felt it the way that they ended up playing, and with Gaston Almeida probably being their MVP, the best player in that game. So yeah, definitely got to talk about all these things that are going around our Paraguayan teams, and looking forward to what could happen in the European market. Roberto, you're just saying that the European season is almost underway, and I'm looking at these guys just thinking that they should already be training, that they should already be with their new teams, and it's not the situation for most of our guys that play in the national team. As today we are recording on the 14th of August, and I'm looking at my calendar, and it is Gustavo Alfaro's birthday, guys. So shout out to our coach, the national team coach. Hopefully, today, maybe why not, or in a couple of days, we get the big news that he wants to stay in Paraguay for many, many more years. But as of right now, happy birthday to our coach. Hopefully, he is the next coach for the next World Cup for our national team.
Happy 64 years to Gustavo Alfaro if he is listening. But yeah, certainly Ralph, I mean, going on to just looking at what's been going on from a domestic standpoint. I mean, obviously in the Copa Paraguay, we've had some games going on, some shock results actually, if you think about it. If you wanted to give a repass of it, but yeah, I mean, it shows the surprise that the the tournament over there, La Copa para Todos, as everyone likes to say, is giving over there in the country.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, hi to everybody watching and listening and on the Copa Paraguay. Well, Fede mentioned about Iteño pulling off maybe the biggest shock of beating Guarani, which I don't think we expected. And then we saw yesterday a very good game with Primero de Marzo against Tembeteru, and in the end it was Tembeteru that went through, but with a hat trick from a guy called Elias Peralta, who was actually made, I think he made his debut with Ariel Holan many years ago when he was 15, or he got picked up by Independiente afterwards. I mean, he was one of those people that came on the radar very young, disappeared, and honestly had no idea where he was until I saw he scored a hat trick for Tempeteru. And then on the other side, Primero de Marzo, you had two goals from Fidencio Oviedo, who of course was, a player the streets won't forget in what around 2013, 2014, 2015. It was a very important part of the Cerro team. And so you see some of these stories coming through, and we've still got some games left, of course, in the Copa Paraguay, because the teams that have the continental action have not played yet. Libertad haven't played yet. So there's still plenty to go. San Lorenzo only just got through, right? They went to penalties against 29 de septiembre. So there's been, a lot going on, and I guess we'll see if this continues to surprise, and we continue to get some of these stories of these players that maybe had dropped off the radar, or people that are making their names in Paraguay with these performances. So there's still plenty to look out for as that's coming up. I'm just checking. I mean, there are some games next week, but then yet, right, we've got the week after when our kind of big clubs are in action with Libertad, and Cerro end up playing at the end of the month, the same as Olimpia. So there's plenty more kind of midweek action from Copa Paraguay to keep us entertained.
Certainly one to keep an eye out for. And obviously, what we're going to keep an eye out for is, of course, in the Copa Libertadores and Sudamericanas. We'll firstly discuss the three teams that participated: Olimpia, Cerro Porteño, and Recoleta. Ironically enough, it happened in reverse in terms of scheduling. Recoleta played first, then Cerro, then Olimpia. But here we're going to talk latest from to basically the what's it called, the earliest, or at least the last few days. So obviously we'll start off with Olimpia. They went to Vasco. They went to São Januário in Rio de Janeiro with obviously a chip on their shoulder, of course, having beaten them a couple of months ago. They won 3-1, but of course Vasco got a 3-0 win over there on April 30th. So, certainly it is a different team. It is a different sort of mentality that both teams have had. Obviously, Vasco are coming in with not doing so well in the domestic league. The same could be said for Olimpia, but Olimpia are the reigning champions as well. But obviously, it is a Sudamericana knockout stage game, so certainly a lot was on the line. And boy, did Vasco really try to get something from in this one, because they really dominated this game. And Fed, I'll go to you first. You talk about Gaston Almeida being the hero of this game, and he really was. He certainly was someone that obviously had all the attention there. 7 saves from a Vasco side that had 7 shots on target out of 21 in total. Dominated possession. Olimpia only had 2 shots and none of them on target. So you did not see much from Olimpia. It really was a defensive siege in this game. But I don't know. I feel like there is always going to be the opinion from a lot of people that this maybe was a result that was lost in a way, that maybe they should have gone more on the initiative. But hey, anytime you can get a result in Brazil, it doesn't matter the opponent or the competition. And we'll talk about one afterwards, but I think I think you can safely say that Olimpia will be the more happier side of the two, especially now that they have to go next week to the Defensores. It's going to be a packed calendar, as we know. But I think certainly from this position that they're in, I think that's as much as they can do. And hey, they were able to deny Vasco any shot, any goal from them. So I think it's a good result.
Yeah, anytime you don't lose against a Brazilian team in Brazil, I think it's a good result for a Paraguayan team that's never been able to win over there in Rio de Janeiro. As you look at the stats in that situation lately, if you look at Olympia's history in Sudamericana itself in the round of 16, they've never been able to get through this stage. So it's all about strategy, right? For this team also to try to get over this this important rock that I think is Vasco da Gama still on their shoes. They played several games against each other already in the year, so they know each other very well. And let's be honest, Olimpia had a couple of players missing, especially in the midfield, that I think are very important, and they didn't get the same thing with the players that came in. You know, we are yet to see the best Richard Sanchez. We are yet to see what Seba Quintana can bring to this team, and they are alternatives. They are the plan B right now for this coach, and they weren't going to be the first option if he had everybody available. So it did have to do with the calendar and the way that the Paraguayan league was set up for most teams to have to play 3 games in just 1 week. I think that was just crazy to start off the year, to start off the semester after a preseason. And you look at both teams, you look at Olimpia and Cerro, and they all had problems with having their best players on the field. And it had to do with that. And look at the results that they had also in the league, right? They did not go well. So for them, it was also playing these kind of games in Libertadores and Sudamericana under some sort of pressure of at least getting the result, getting out of there alive. And for Olimpia, it kind of felt that way because of everything that Gaston Olveira had to do with the defense. Probably, I don't know if I have to stand out somebody in that defense. I'm gonna say Brian Bentaverri, guys. I mean, this guy is winning his spot over right now alongside Mateo Gamarra, and that was the spot that during the last campaign when Olimpia was champion of the Apertura, Brian Bentaverri wasn't the first option either. But apparently now he's won that position over other players. So good for him, and he had a really good game. You're kind of waiting for the players that were brought to make the difference in this competition. The attackers also, but we barely saw them in this match. I mean, Olimpia barely had the ball. Olimpia barely tried to attack. They were really under a lot of pressure from Vasco da Gama. I'm thinking to myself, this is a good result because they didn't get scored on. If we have to be honest with each other, probably Vasco da Gama deserved it. So I think Olimpia is going to come with a different strategy with their fans now in Defensores del Chaco. They're getting ready for a battle. They're getting ready for a party. And they want to see their team get through. And I think Olimpia is going to come out very differently next week, guys. So for me, it's a good result. I think overall, I'm happy with what Olimpia did, Ralph. Even though, obviously, their fans had to suffer way too much.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely suffered in this game because what we saw from Vasco was more the team that had won 3-0 than the team that had lost, right? They really they they found it very easy to control possession, partly because of the Olympian midfield and who they were missing. I mean, if you looked in that midfield, like they were trying to play Fernando Cardoso in the middle, he's usually he's usually wider, so he's not that kind of player that's going to be able to control a lot of the ball. And if you look, it's Cardoso is who they try to play through Olympia, and it's just very difficult. So Vasco had that possession, and they were creating chances. Oliveira, I think 2 of his best saves are in the first half. And then what we saw from Olimpia was, I guess settle for the result, knowing that they probably weren't going to be able to steal the win. They really struggled as well with Brian Romero as the lone striker because he just didn't really have, I think, the legs to be the person to be on a counter-attack team. Actually, when they brought on Thiago Caballero, maybe they had a bit more kind of help with playing on the counter and just trying to win some loose balls. But what we saw was definitely Olimpia in the second half kind of settle for that result and actually start to just take a bit more defensive control of the game. And I didn't really feel in that second half that Vasco were going to win. It was more in that first half, like onslaught, where you said, "Oh no, this could get out of hand very quickly if Vasco score and start to build on the pressure." But because they got to halftime 0-0, and then they were able to sort of reset and um, Bettenberry, but also Gamarra, I thought did really well defensively, kind of organizing the defense, and then they managed to. I'm trying to think of some chances that Vasco had, late on. There wasn't really a clear-cut chance, so they did what they had to do, Olympia. like we were saying, it's going to be totally different. I think actually the commentators were saying they interviewed Oliveira after the game, and one of the first questions was, what's it going to be like with all the fans next week? Because everybody's expecting a full house in Defensores del Chaco. And as Fede pointed to, it's going to be a totally different game and strategy. And really, it it really does play in your favor that you play the second leg at home, because now Olimpia know exactly what they have to do. They'll have a bit of extra time to reset. Hopefully, they'll get some of the players back that were injured. And so there should be a positivity, I think, going into the second leg in Asuncion.
Are you both saying that they will qualify next week? Fede?
I'm not so sure, guys. I'm actually worried because I don't know where the goals are gonna come from. I mean, I'm looking at their strikers and they're not finding it easy. I'm looking at Romeo Benitez, which was probably one of the guys that started out this season hot, and he looked like he could make the difference. These last two games been kind of scrappy for him. So there's been even rumors that Olimpia is still looking for a striker out there in the market. They've been linked to different names. Milton Jimenez from Boca, I think they even made an offer, and it was apparently Boca didn't like it. Now they're talking about Gabriel Avalos from Independiente. He plays in the national team. So apparently Olimpia is going to make a run for another striker because they're not happy with just having Romero. They lost Alcaraz. He was so important, and his shoes are yet to be filled, I believe. So for me, it's about that. I mean, if they're gonna have those players that can make the difference, if they're gonna have those players that can come in and do something for this team. I mean, lately I'm looking at Lescano, and he's not the same one that came in when he put this jersey on at the beginning of the year. So I don't know if he's finding all the solutions that he needs. I'm talking about the coach, and he's gonna have to attack in this game to try to win it. So it could go to penalties. It could come down to Gaston Oliveira. I think it could be just another battle, another very tight game, just like it was this first match, guys. So for me, I have my doubts now after watching this first game. I was very confident with Olimpia, but after watching this first match and how much they suffered, I have my doubts, Ralph.
The difficulty is the goals, right? Because apart from that Rubio New game, they haven't scored all season. I mean, this is now the fifth game of the season, right? And they have 5 goals, but they all came against Rubio New. So that's definitely the question, because you look to the bench and say, well, Sandoval, is he going to give me anything different than Romero? Probably not. Sebastian Ferreira, when he's playing well, he's important, but when he's not, there's no goals, which is he's in that moment right now where he's not really finding anything. So yeah, you're kind of like, well, and Thiago Caballero came on, showed a bit more, but what Caballero did well was not goal scoring. It was more like running the channels and working to help the team. So it is looking difficult for them, especially Lescano is a great person to mention. Like, he came on for Benitez because Benitez wasn't having the effect you hoped for. And Lescano just really did nothing. Like, he wasn't able to get into the game at all. So it's those attacking options that make it difficult. I don't know though. I still think if they're able to get the draw here, they should, in theory, be able to do something at home. But it is that question mark of where do they, where's that goal going to come from? Where's that difference going to come from? Maybe it's one of those defenders, right? They didn't have a single corner in this match because they weren't even attacking or getting forward enough. But maybe that's where it comes from, a set piece or even a penalty, something just to settle the nerves early on, and they managed to see out a 1-0. So I've still got some hope for them to go through.
So you both say that they still qualify? Fede, you're going through penalties. Is that where you're going, or is that still you're on the edge?
No, I think Olympia's gonna do it somehow. It could end up in penalties, but I expect for Olympia to get at least a goal in front of their fans to make it happen some way. The fans are gonna push this team, even though they're not playing their prettiest football of the year. I think they're a better team than Vasco, and they'll get it done somehow.
Ralph?
Yeah, I think it's the same. Like, I think they'll find a way somehow. I just can't tell you how that way will be, but it's the mystica, right? There's always a way with these big teams. So I think they'll get through.
I think so as well. I think I'll say 1-0 from Delmas. I don't know why. I feel like it's gonna be a big game from him. So I'm gonna pick him as the guy that might shine for Olimpia on that one. So obviously another game that's gonna be a big one at La Nueva Olla this time is gonna be Cerro Porteño because Cerro Porteño are coming off a crazy game over there in Palmeiras against Palmeiras over there in São Paulo, and certainly a big matchup as we know because of the history that both the two teams have had. Obviously, Cerro have had their numbers so far this season, similar to I guess Vasco and Olimpia, but the fact that Cerro are now unbeaten now in 3 games so far. Cerro Porteño getting the draw at home and then them beating them over there at the new Bank Park in São Paulo, and then it kind of looked like it was going to be this way. It felt like Cedro had a chance there, even though Palmeiras were dominating them on the stats perspective. I think only Cedro had 1 shot on target the entire game, but Cedro felt like it feels weird, Ralph. And we'll talk about the game as itself, but obviously, you had a few incidents from firsthand. I think the first one is from Cecilio Dominguez, a really good chance on goal. He beats Carlos Miguel, the goalkeeper, but he tried to draw the foul, and many fans were saying, "Why on earth did he do that? Why was he trying to win the penalty?" Which, of course, he didn't. Instead of just trying to shoot, I mean that was the first frustration from the Cerro fans in this game.
Yeah, but if we're just talking about Cecilio Dominguez like trying to do something different, I, I mean, yeah, it was a bizarre idea. I mean, he was there, for example, he beat the goalkeeper and then he steps on the goalkeeper and he by feeling the contact decides to take the foul, which just the way we've talked about this a lot at the moment, like the way the referees are letting the game run anyway, so those little fouls are not really giving, but then they're so strict on anything in the box as well. It really has to be very obvious because the worst case they'll just let VAR pick it up, right? And of course VAR picks this up and sees that it's Cecilio stepping on the goalkeeper, so there was nothing there. And I mean, overall, what we saw from Cerro though was I thought this was a much different game to what I expected them to play, and much better in some ways. I mean, they were really trading blows with Palmeiras for a lot of the game, doing some of the that verticality which Holland likes, and they were doing that and still managing to stay afloat, if that makes sense. Because you could easily get run away by someone like Palmeiras. And so I thought they were taking the game to them, and the game was also like it was kind of boiling up, partly because of those fouls that weren't getting given, and maybe it's the other Dominguez, right? It's Fabricio Dominguez that maybe survives with a very late challenge towards the end of the first half. He got booked. It wasn't given as a red card, but it was a very hefty challenge. And maybe that kind of sets the tone because really what changes the game here, of course, is a red card to Andrea Pereira of Palmeiras, which comes in the second half. So is that Pereira red card where things have started to change? And maybe it was, building up, because I'm just looking quickly here. By then, Cerro had picked up like 3 yellow cards, and so maybe Palmeiras are getting frustrated that the game wasn't going how they expected. Cerro even scored, right? Guillermo Benitez scores, and it gets ruled out. It's an unlucky moment for him because he's trying to come back from an offside position, but he doesn't come back enough, and he's clearly offside. But at that point, I think that must have been when Palmeiras like, whoa, okay, like we need to reset. We're not in the game we thought we were, and so I think that's full credit to Holland for the way he was brave with Cerro and set them up and to the players, right, how they responded. I particularly thought Vegetti had a really interesting game where he was coming very deep, and he was able to do that because Dominguez Cecilia was almost playing with him as a second striker. And so he was coming a lot deeper and trying to build things up rather than being the last player trying to score goals. And that gave Cerro a lot more, I guess, creativity or yeah, it just gave them more bodies as they tried to move forward. And so this is a direct contrast to Olimpia that we are just talking about, right? And Brian Romero didn't do that, and they really never got the ball forward. So yeah, overall, I mean, a really good game for Cerro. That they'll be frustrated maybe that they went the goal down when Palmeiras are down to 10 men. But then they did what they've been doing in Libertadores all year, and they haven't been giving up, and they kept fighting towards the end, and they find the goal. And I'm still really not sure who that goal is, by the way, the final goal, because Torres shoots. Vegetti slides in, but we don't think he touches the ball. And then Carlos Miguel, the goalkeeper, it goes through his legs. And so I think it's been given as an own goal for him. But I don't know I mean, it looked like it was going on target anyway. So I'm not sure if Torres could get some kind of credit there. But I mean, either way, that's the way Cerro have done it this year. I think in Libertadores, they've found ways to get results when it matters. And so credit to them, I think, for this one, which is again setting it up really well for them in the second leg back in Asuncion.
Yeah, certainly, going into those moments, I mean, obviously the VAR goal that Guillermo Benitez does not get, then obviously Flaco Lopez scoring where, Rolfo maybe should have done better. I think people said that maybe there was nothing he can do. And then, of course, yeah, was it Vegetti? Was it Carlos Miguel? Who knows? But who cares? Because Cedro get a priceless result over there and it sets them up in a good spot, hopefully for the next game over there in La Nueva Olla, which, I think if you're a Cedro fan, you feel very content of the result, but maybe a bit frustrated that this could have been the game to snatch a win there.
Yeah, I felt the same way, Roberto, and I said it to a couple of friends after this match that maybe Cerro fans could feel that they could have won it because at a certain point in this game in the mud against Palmeiras, they put him in uncomfortable places, and they even scored first, and then they got called off. It would have been a great important goal also for Miguel Benitez, guys. I mean, this guy's been going through it all. They've been that left back position, especially, right? I mean, he's been trying everybody, even one with Chamorro this time around, the youngest one out of them all. So certain players just haven't been up to it. They tried with Blas Riveros and he couldn't get fit. He got injured again. So they've been having trouble in that defense. Let's not forget that they even lost Matias Perez right before this match. So I'm looking at this game and the way it played out, and I'm happy with the way Cerro Porteño fought it out because they made this game a physical one, and I like the way Cerro really approached the game. This is how you play Libertadores game, especially against Brazilian teams. You need to make them uncomfortable. You need to be up to that intense game, the 90 minutes, that roller coaster of maybe not getting the calls and still getting up on these kind of matches. You need to be ready for that, and I thought that Cerro was ready for it. And even though they went through hard times, they got right back to it, and they ended up fighting again. And even though they got scored on, they right again they were getting their opportunities. I mean, right before they scored, I mean, let's not forget Morel had a really good opportunity. So I thought that Cerro was in it, and they deserved to get out of there with something. So if you're a Cerro Porteño fan, yeah, you're chatting for this team. You're thinking, okay, we can do this. We can pull this upset and leave one of the biggest teams in this Libertadores out of it. Palmeiras has their own pressure. I saw it in this game, especially from their fans. So they're gonna come with the responsibility of having to go through, and Cerro is just gonna have to be smart about it. And I love what I'm seeing from certain players in these kind of matches. Ralph mentioned Begetti. Yeah, he's always pulling through in these games. He's always doing something. Torres also. He's always in the mud. He's always fighting for every single ball. I love that out of him. And if you can get some other contributions, hopefully Cecilio can eventually have a good game in this Libertadores. He does not do enough for me to be in that starting role, but who else does, right? And with Iturbe still out, with other players still not up for it, I mean, they signed a whole bunch of players, but you look at this squad right now, and they're not in this game. They're not in this starting 11. I'm talking about Marota. I'm talking about other players that they brought in that they thought were gonna make the difference. Gamarra in the midfield, and he's barely playing. But I don't know. To be honest with you guys, I'm feeling confident about Cerro Porteño's chances, and I'm hoping that they can pull this upset, especially in front of their fans. It could be that huge night in Libertadores for them to just get everybody on their side. This is not the only Brazilian side you're gonna have to go through if you want to be a Libertadores champion, if you want to make it to the latter stages. But this is a team that's starting to build up. And I think, this Holland project and wherever this is actually going, they need to get through this stage to keep on building. They need to get through a team like Palmeiras to show that Cerro Porteño is looking for something big in the continental stage. So I'm rooting for these guys, and they showed me enough, Roberto. This is the team that I wanted to see in Brazil, the way that they fought it. So I think they can do it in Asunción with their fans.
So you see them qualify then. That's your pick.
Yeah, I see them doing it. I think Palmeiras has a lot of problems. We even saw their captain. I mean, Gomez, he had to come in the second half. They even needed him. He hasn't been 100% after the World Cup. He's starting to come into himself again. It was kind of weird for me to not see Sosa in that starting team. He came in the second half also. I think Palmeiras is eventually going to throw everything at Cerro Porteño. They're going to have to be ready for it also. But Cerro Porteño, I think, they're having a special run this season. They already beat this team once. I think they could do it again.
Yeah,
Ralph?
the thing about the Palmeiras team, just to mention, right, it wasn't necessarily like their strongest lineup, or it's hard to say what their strongest lineup is, maybe because they're building in the players from the World Cup like slowly but surely. You can see getting more minutes. So there is that one concern maybe that they show up at La Hoya and suddenly it's Mauricio who didn't feature, right? And Ramon Sosa from the start and Gustavo Gomez, of course, who has scored against Cerro for Palmeiras. I mean, he has that history as well. So I mean, there is that maybe that fear, I suppose, that they could show up with a almost like a renewed team and really try and steamroll the Cerro. But then at the same time, Cerro's now gone 3 games unbeaten against Palmeiras this year. And so it's all of a sudden, I think maybe some of that fear factor has been taken away. And they've also done it, like I think we were just talking about, with different sets of players because of injuries or because Holland has been changing things up. So there's a whole squad mentality there that we should be able to do this. I just wanted to jump in on the goal because I haven't been too impressed with Rafa in the season, but I don't think he was at fault for the goal. I think really what happens is, unfortunately, Guillermo Benitez gets beaten by I can't remember, I think it's Allen on the left hand side, and then Morel's the backup because of course they've been playing with a back five anyway, but also Morel has dropped back there to try and help, and Morel gets caught flat-footed as well. So it's like really the cross should never have come in, but because of those two players there, but they both get beaten. I think is Velasquez tries to head it away. He can't get enough on it to really like see the ball out, and so it falls to Lopez for the goal. But I thought, Rafa didn't have much to do on that one. There was like a shaky moment in the first half, I remember, where he's trying to catch the ball, like coming out. That's where he's been a bit more shaky, I suppose, is trying to come out to claim balls. And I think one, like he sort of drops and then he managed to get it at the second time. And you can see like the defense is a bit unsure because of what the errors that have happened earlier in the season. But in shot stopping, I mean, he did really well. Palmeiras had plenty of shots on target, and he pulled off some good saves there to keep them in the match. And they'll need him again on Wednesday of next week in Asunción to go through. And yeah, I honestly think they put themselves in a great spot to be able to do it. So I think we could see Cerro in the quarterfinals of the Copa Libertadores, which would be a huge achievement.
It would be huge. Yeah, I think so as well. I think there is something about this team that, what they've got in the last three results isn't a coincidence. So I think they are really in a good spot for them to qualify. And I see them qualifying. I think someone's gonna be a hero. Maybe it's Vegeti, maybe he does it again, in this sense. But yeah, I personally think that they're gonna do it. And so that's Olimpia and Cerro Porteño doing it. But one team that really has a huge mountain to climb is, the minnows of this sort of the three teams, even though the team that's kind of impressed because they went unbeaten in this whole run, is Recoleta. Recoleta went to Buenos Aires to take on powerhouse Boca Juniors, and it started so well, Ralph. It really did. It started so well with Pedro Rios scoring after just 5 minutes, but then one incident turned into something that just made it all the worst. Wilfrido Valles getting sent off for a really ridiculous challenge that you have all those cameras in the world and you do that is absolutely incredible that you do something like that. It's absolutely shameful. And then what happens in the second half, because they were still leading 1-0 at halftime, Boca go and score easily. They score from the 49th minute and they score twice again, and they score again in the 51st. So that's two goals already in 2 minutes. And then Flores scores in the 62nd minute. Then Mosquera gets sent off. So Recoleta actually finished the game with 9 men. But everything that went wrong for Jorge Gonzalez's team went wrong that night in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, it started like this fairy tale um start, but definitely kind of a villainous finish for for Wilfrido Valles. So I think we called out on the show as one of those players to look out for that's had this career where he's maybe never been at a big team, but he's always performed well and always played well. And it was such a shame because I don't know. Obviously, it's in the heat of the moment, and maybe you're not thinking, but of course, VAR is going to pick that up, right? Anything like that, and so that really changes the whole halftime team talk for Jorge Gonzalez because it's literally at they're just about to go in at halftime. It's stoppage time in the first half. And you just think if they'd gone in winning, but with 11 men, it would have been it would have been such a different moment and who knows like because I was thinking at the time about Capiatá, could they have done the Capiatá and held on and won 1-0. But Boca has so much quality. They smelled the weakness at the moment as Sebastian Villa comes on at halftime and he actually assists both the goals that come shortly after the break. So I think they just felt the momentum shift, Boca, and went in there and kind of took advantage. Um, I don't know, like I'm still thinking about this game. If I'm Recoleta, I wouldn't feel like I'm fully out of it because of what they did, 11 versus 11, right? What was to stop them being 1-0 up in Asuncion next week, and then instead of having a player sent off, maybe you grab a goal at the end and you can take it to penalties. Like hopefully they don't feel they're fully out of it, but it really does feel like a great chance wasted. And again, such a big team like Boca who now are able to kind of go into this second leg knowing that Recoleta have to attack them instead of the pressure on them to attack Recoleta. It's going to make it really, really difficult. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how this kind of pans out. It's obviously not in Recoleta's favor. But I guess at least they got that goal at the beginning and it's only a 2 goal difference that maybe gives you some hope. There's if you can score early and then you're always like just 1 goal away from taking it to penalties. So maybe that's what they'll look to do again, right? Surprise early like they did here and almost pulled off a famous win.
Yeah, they're gonna need an epic one here in Asuncion, guys, because this one got ugly because of just one player. And let's be honest. I mean, we never want to point fingers at just one player when there's 11 out there, when you got the whole bench, you got the coach, you got the president, everybody is obviously responsible to what happens. But when you get a childish red card like Wilfrido Valles did, in probably the biggest game of your career, I mean, and then the way that he tried to explain it, and just the way that he said it, I mean, I was blown away by this, by him saying, I didn't say sorry to anybody in that locker room. That was kind of weird to me because there's so much in stake for this club. I mean, this is the biggest game in the history of Recoleta, or in the recent history, no doubt about it. So for you to say this when there's so much at stake, and when you get a red card that can shake up the whole locker room, because I'm sure that there were guys pointing fingers and coming out at Wilfrido Baez. I even heard him say that the president was waiting for him at the locker room and he wanted explanations of what happened. So it was a red card that had its effect, obviously, in the game. And for a team like Recoleta, they needed to play a perfect game against a team like Boca, and they did it. The mistakes ended up costing them way too much. They ended up playing with just 9 players, and I would say, just that 2 goal margin, it should have been more. It could have been at least 2 more, even, because Boca had them against the ropes the whole second half, and it could have been a really ugly one. I'm actually happy that it's just 2 goals, and we heard Gonzalez even say during the cooling break to his players. I mean, let's get out of here alive. 2 goals, we might be able to turn it around, but if we get scored one more, it's going to be pretty much impossible. So it is going to be the mindset for this team going into the second game. And I don't know, guys, just the image the night before of President Vidal and Coach Gonzalez also sharing with the Boca hooligans and having a party pretty much before the game. That was kind of weird to me. I mean, you need to be focused on the match that you're gonna play. You need to be on top of your players, on top of every little detail. I know, and I get the stage that you're playing. I know that it was probably not even in the plans of this club at the beginning of the year to play against Boca, but I mean, before the game, I didn't like that. I mean, you need to be on top of every single detail, and hopefully, I know it didn't have anything to do with both players being sent off, but for me, I mean, the head coach needs to be the example out there, and I didn't like that from him. I didn't like that from the president, and those are little details that you don't see that from other teams when they go visit other clubs in other countries, especially at this stage, guys. I mean, this is not the first game of the Sudamericana. I mean, we're talking about knockout stage. We're talking about an important game for Recoleta, and I didn't like that from the president. I didn't like it from the coach. I didn't like what happened with Frido Albayes, which I think needs to say that he is sorry. I think he needs to at least say sorry to Recoleta fans because they were really looking for an opportunity and they didn't get it because after he was sent off, the game was really over. I mean, they played really well, 11 on 11. And I'm sorry I'm going off on just one player or this situation. I wanted to talk about Recoleta winning this game, and I really thought that they had a chance. What we saw in that first half, what we saw in that first half hour of the game, that's the real Recoleta. That's the potential that this team has. That's why I'm really let down. That's why I'm so disappointed in just the way that the match played out, Roberto.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it certainly felt like a missed opportunity for them. I mean, is there any way that they turn it around, Ralph?
I mean, it would have to be so epic. The one thing maybe in their favor, right, is that Boca will feel they've sewn this up and they've got this done, right, in a way, um, because of the 2 goal lead. But you just think about the difficulty of the game state now is that Recoleta have to go out and find 2 goals. So Boca just know that and can just wait and sit on the break. Whereas before, when Recoleta did score that first goal, it was total opposite. It was Boca where we're at home, we have to go out, we have to make a statement, we have to try and find the goals. And so Recoleta can play on that. I mean, yeah, it's going to make them very easy, I think, to play against. They're missing Bias, who is one of their best players. I mean, apart from the fact that he got sent off in that way, it's also they're missing one of their better players. So it just seems like it'd be a mountain to climb that's too high. I mean, who knows, right? Because this is a team. This is the first game they've lost, right? The whole tournament. So they can still say, well, hold on, if we're 11 against 11, we always have a chance. I just think though a 2 goal taking it like winning by 2 goals, and we're only talking about 2 goals to take it to penalties, right? We're not even saying to win by three and win outright. It's going to be very difficult. I think if they were to score early, that's their best hope, right? And if they score early, the immediate reaction from Boca is what they'll have to try and, hold off that 10-15 minutes I'm sure they'll get of an onslaught. And then if the game settles and you're still 1-0 up and it's, I don't know, the 80th minute, there's always that kind of chance. But yeah, I think that's a very unlikely scenario. I think unfortunately this has probably been maybe a goal too many for them to be able to come back.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel the same way, guys. I feel like this series was over in Buenos Aires. Boca, I think, is a better team now that they were before the World Cup. I think they just look better, well put together right now. Perez is really running the show in that midfield, and And Recoleta is not a worse team, but they have less than they did. So, and they didn't make big signings, guys. I mean, they didn't sign players thinking, okay, we can make a run in this Sudamericana. We can aim for the championship. No, I think this team has always been pretty honest about their situation and about their budget, about not going over it. And I think this is just too much for them after what happened in this first game. Hopefully they can come out of this second game saying, okay, okay, we're proud about this team. We fought against Boca. They might even beat Boca by a goal and be happy about the situation, but I don't think it's going to be enough to eliminate a team like Boca. I think this is just too big of a rock for them to climb, too big of a mountain to climb, just like you said, Roberto. So I think this is enough for them for this year, for their first experience in Sudamericana. But they're going to build from this. I think Recoleta, this is not the last we're going to see from them in a continental competition.
I agree. I agree. It's going to be interesting to see what they do and how all three of these teams do in the Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana. And obviously, we'll keep an eye on that as we always do here on Guarani Vision. But before we go, obviously, we have to talk about a news that just happened literally this morning. Actually, when we woke up, is the re-signing of Diego Gomez to Brighton. You know, Brighton have kept him for another couple years until 2030. I think that's certainly something that shows the importance that they have for him at Brighton. You know, Ralph, will go to you on this one first. You know, certainly a player that I think is still important for his team. Sorry, 2031. That's what I meant. So 5 more years with them. Obviously, you know, this has been some rumors of going on of him possibly moving in this summer. He did not have a good World Cup, as we obviously talked about. So I guess this is his way to kind of bounce back for him. But it shows that, you know, he kind of passed that test that he is able to do well in England ever since leaving Inter Miami, and that he's still vital, at least from a Brighton perspective, especially for a team that, you know, always is known for selling their young players or selling players that are on the high and getting their stock. They just lost Danny Welbeck, so technically Gomez is the highest goal scorer still on their team at the minute, if you look at all the competitions. But you know, certainly it's good for him to stay put. But you know, if he continues to go on this upward trajectory that we hope he does, it won't be long until, you know, maybe someone has to go in and break the bank for him.
Yeah, I think it's really good news for Diego because you would assume it's an improved contract from what he got when he signed, right, from Inter Miami. So for him, he's securing what would be a true Premier League salary. And also the 5 years speaks to one thing, a reminder that he's still only 23, right? So he's still, this takes him into what should be, I guess, his peak as a footballer, right? Around the 28-year age. So Brighton are kind of securing that, I guess, if, like, to your point, they wanted to sell him on. And also, I think Diego Gomez is pretty much cementing his place in the team and going to be one of those important parts, definitely for next season. And like you say, it comes off, maybe he didn't have a great World Cup, but I think what we're looking at more is he had a very good season with Brighton, and he's not just when he's scoring the goals, but his versatility is so important. He's so useful that he can play in different roles within the midfield. And so good for him, right? I mean, he gets that, and I think it's good for Paraguay that you have somebody in the Premier League kind of not just fleeting, like maybe Enciso, Alderete, we don't know, Balbuena before him. It's more like an Almiron, right? Somebody that's actually going to stay there for many years, build up a good career. So good for him.
Yeah, I think it's a prize, guys, after what he had, after the great season that he had with this team last year. I mean, just the numbers he put up, just as much as he played, how important he was in that locker room, the relationship he ended up building also with his coach, I think was also part of it. And just him showing that he's up for it. I mean, when you sign a player like this, you always have your doubts if he's gonna be able to perform, if he's gonna fit in, and he did. I think he filled out all the boxes that Brighton needed to re-sign him and to make a deal like this, 2031. I mean, this is huge. I mean, this is a long time. This is a long-term signing, so it shows, you know, from the Brighton side that just like Ralph said, I mean, yeah, they're probably trying to contain their player and they're thinking, okay, if he makes a jump, at least we already have him signed here. They're gonna have to talk to us eventually. But I'm looking at it from the other side. I mean, I wanted Diego Gomez to be one of the important players in the national team during the World Cup, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was a top five player in that in our team even. So I'm still waiting for him to make that leap. Hopefully, he has that kind of season now with Brighton, with this confidence, with him not thinking about, okay, what's my next team gonna be? What am I gonna sign next? No, his head is gonna be totally with what Brighton needs to do, or maybe he just stays with this team, guys. I mean, to have a career in Brighton and to stay many years, I think it's big, it's huge. But I actually want him to become a star. I don't know if he has. I don't know if he has that in him. I hope that he does because I think that he does, but he needs to show that now, taking it to the next level, just staying hungry and making the difference also against the big teams in the Premier League. I think that's what's gonna get him under the big teams' radars again, and obviously doing it with the national team also. But it wasn't just Diego Gomez. I was just reading Gustavo Gomez also apparently signed with Palmeiras till 2030, guys. And what talk about a legend there, right? I mean, Palmeiras love him. And just when I thought, okay, is he eventually going to come back to the Paraguayan league? Is he going to end his career with Libertad where it all started? Apparently not, guys. I mean, I think Gustavo Gomez might end his career as a Palmeiras legend, and I think he might even play the next World Cup. Now that I'm looking at this, he just signed a deal with Palmeiras, so our captain, the national team captain, has also secured his spot for the next years.
Yeah, I think it's certainly something, many more players could make moves as well. We have to keep an eye on Julian Ciso as well. It looks like he's probably going to join Ipswich, but we'll have to wait and see until it's official. But it looks like it's going to be. But, going back to Diego, just to finish it off, Ralph, I mean, certainly it's going to be interesting for him as well that he's going to be playing in a European competition. They'll be playing in the Conference League this year, similar to Alderete in the what's it called in the Europa League with Sunderland. So you have Paraguay, and that's always been something that we always wanted to see. It's all good to see Paraguayan players play in Europe and whatnot, but not in European competitions. I think the only guy that did that before was Julian Ciso, but he had that injury and he only had come through in the last stages of the competition. That's when they got eliminated. Now, in this case, hopefully, if they all stay fit, that you have someone like Alderete and Gomez, going into, I guess, the Premier League chat, which starts next week, that they get consistent minutes playing in multiple competitions because that raises your stock in a way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think going back to Gomez, in particular Diego Gomez, it also gives him he has huge security now in terms of if he does get an injury, because I think we were just saying about injuries or playing so many games together, right? Because now you have the midweek European game and the league at the weekend. And this actually gives him that security because he has had injuries before, but knowing that the club is kind of behind him. And so hopefully they will manage him. I'm sure they will manage him very well with the rotation with these extra games. But like you say, we want to see Paraguayans competing at the higher level. We want, I don't know, another Taquara who played a Europa League final. I'm trying to even think if there's been one more recently, but I don't know, right? I mean, you want those. You want the Derlis Gonzalez scoring against
Almiron,
Iker Casillas.
yeah, Almiron playing in Newcastle when they went to the Champions League.
Yeah, Almiron in big Champions League nights, and so you want those kind of moments again for Paraguayan players because they take that back. Always thinking about Albiroca, they take those experiences back, and when they play a big game with Paraguay, they say, "Well, actually, I faced this guy already, right? I played against this person already, and I have no fear," which they've shown anyway, especially under Alfaro. But this just helps build that up, and those experiences are so important.
Yeah, I mean, Fede, I mean, this is certainly something that they need as well. Certainly now in kind of this down period with Paraguay that they don't have to play major competitions, at least not until the Copa America, which is not for another 2 years. At least now it's almost as if they can really focus on their club game, and if they do have to play for Paraguay, they focus on that, but kind of rebuilding on that end.
Yeah, and they're the base of the national team right now, guys. I mean, so moving forward, we need them to be on their top game. We need them to be playing those kind of matches, and I'm hoping for more signings, guys. I know I've been insisting on this situation, but I just can't get my head around the situation that we still got Orlando Hill in San Lorenzo. He got sent off the other day in the Clásico against Huracan. He got a little heated up, and he got a red card. Hopefully they get him out of there eventually. I don't want to see him there anymore. And hopefully in a couple of days we're talking about where is Matias Galarza gonna play. And so far what we've been hearing is just Italian teams, but I don't know if there's other teams around on the radar. He's definitely a player to watch out because of the kind of World Cup that he has. So I'm really looking forward to where he's gonna sign, where he's gonna play.
No, yeah, no, totally. It's going to be interesting to see as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.